Hey there folks, it's Matt once again, and welcome back to another video. This one, I was thinking of doing for a while. I mentioned it briefly in one of the Team Con reviews, where I wanted to do a video showing some of the older stuff I have. What I mean by older, I mean movies that are from like the 20s, from maybe the 60s. It's not all of them, but usually on this channel, the majority of it is stuff from the 80s, 90s, or maybe today's stuff. And granted, I talk about those the most because the 80s and 90s are my favorite decades for movies. Not only the decades I grew up with, but just my taste in movies, my cup of tea in movies. A lot of my favorites are from the 80s and 90s, whether it be action films like the Rambo films, Hard to Target, Stallone, Van Damme, early Steven Seagal, Dolph Lundgren, Jeff Speakman, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Chuck Norris, whether it be action films like Broken Arrow, like I said, Hard Target, the Rambo films, Commando, The Last Boy Scout, Speed, many more, or horror films from The Blob, 1988, John Carpenter's The Thing, many of John Carpenter's films, Aliens, Predator, then Predator 2, Jacob's Ladder, it goes on and on. But there is stuff I enjoy from back in the day. And again, just wanted to show some of them off and give my thoughts, a little bit of history from my point of view. Growing up with people like the Three Stooges, Abbott and Costello. I did watch a little bit of Laurel and Hardy. I don't have any of those, but I did watch a little bit of Laurel and Hardy. Wasn't really much into the Marx Brothers. Just wasn't really much for me, at least. But one guy I really enjoyed is Red Skelton. I don't even know anyone who remembers this guy. This is a guy who was a comedy legend. He had a radio show in the 40s. He had a TV show. He did movies like Whistling in Dixie, Whistling in the Dark. He had characters like Clem Diddlehopper, Freddy the Freeloader. That was probably his most popular character. He had guests on his show like Bing Crosby, Vincent Price, Ed Sullivan, even John Wayne. Really enjoyed this guy. Seemed like he had a good heart to him. He was sort of the Clown Prince was his nickname. And no, not the Joker, but I had a VHS of this when I was a kid. And while I don't have a VCR anymore because it broke, I picked this up because it brings back memories. This is one of the VHS tapes. Not this exact one, but a version of this that I watched many times when I was a kid. And you can find this, I think it's an hour. You can find it on YouTube. But Red Skelton, a comedy scrapbook, which tells a little bit of his history, of his life, some of his skits, things of that nature. Just again, rare movie clips, TV sketches, as it says there. And a while ago I picked up this, which is a box set from, get the actual company, Good Times. Good Times DVD. Once again, I really enjoyed this guy. For me, this was a cool set because one of my favorites, bloopers, blunders, and ad-libs, mistakes that he would make on his show, and he would make stuff up on the fly or go along with it. And he had a good wit to him. Of course, rated G. I mean, it's not Richard Pryor or George Carlin or anything. But for that time period, really enjoyed him. Again, had a good heart to him. He also had King of Laughter, which tells a little bit of his history. Kind of like the comedy scrapbook. And then some episodes of his TV show. where he did sketches playing an assortment of characters. And then one of the films he made, which was part of an episode of a show, so that's why it's only 48 minutes long, called Public Pigeon #1. Yeah, I've always been a fan of Red Skelton. From vaudeville and radio to Hollywood and television, the late Red Skelton was truly the king of laughter. I think that's the nickname I was thinking of, the king of laughter. This hilarious compilation celebrates his reign with comedy bits, sketches, and Red's trademark ad-libs. That's definitely one guy I grew up with. Another guy I grew up with, or I should say two guys, is Abbott and Costello. And this is the Abbott and Costello collection. I remember, first off, my aunt sending us a tape full of, it was a couple of their movies. Mainly Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man, Buck Privates, and then the sequel, Buck Privates Come Home, and then one called Pardon My Saron. It was a couple VHS tapes that she had sent. And those are the movies I remember the most. So, when the time came, I had to snatch this up. Because they worked a lot with Universal, and it's the complete Universal collection, which has a good chunk of their movies. A good chunk of the movies. Sadly, they do that 2 movies per disc. They have One Night in the Tropics, which is their debut, to Buck Privates. Yeah, Hold That Ghost. Here Comes the Coeds. Little Giants. There's the one with Meet Frankenstein. Meet the Killer, Boris Karloff. They were being pretty successful. They were one of the big box office stars in the 1940s, and then there was some strife in between the two. The two of them didn't get along the best. I know at one point, I think one of Lou Costello's kids passed away. I believe someone drowned. And then Lou Costello's kid. And then Bud Abbott, he had a habit of drinking. And Lou Costello, he wanted spotlight for himself. If he had the chance, from what I understand, he would have had Costello and Abbott instead of Abbott and Costello. So there was strife in between. And so they weren't really sure they wanted to work together. And then when you got into the late 40s, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein really upped their box office again, and that's why you started seeing a lot more horror stuff that they were part of, like Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man, and then one Meet the Killer, Boris Karloff. And I mean, here you got Abbott and Costello Meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Meet the Mummy. It's like, well, Universal, one or two things that are popular for Universal. Abbott and Costello and the Monsters. And my favorite is Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. It's very funny. Really cool to see Bela Lugosi and Lon Chaney Jr. And it's too bad Boris Karloff wasn't the Frankenstein monster, but he didn't want to do it because he thought, well, you're making fun of the monsters. I don't think that's really the right thing to do. But then again, he did later on work with them and Meet the Killer, Boris Karloff. Even though he's not the killer in that. He's just another guy. He's not the killer in that movie. But he did play Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in this movie. So, yeah. Really enjoy those guys. Sad that they didn't get along like they did. They have great chemistry with each other on screen. It's just, sometimes that's how it works with comedy teams, I've noticed. That's why it was nice that Cheech and Chong got back together. Because they were away for a while, and they weren't really loving each other for a while, and then they came back. Sadly, not for a movie, There was a really crappy animated movie, but I am a big Cheech and Chong fan, though. That would probably be my favorite comedy team. That or these guys. Might have to pick with these guys, and that is the Three Stooges. Big fan of the Three Stooges. Once again, my aunt, because we lived on a farm in the middle of nowhere, we had like 4 channels. 2 was CBS, 1 was ABC, and 1 was PBS. So our aunt, or my aunt, would send us, the family, VHS tapes of stuff taped, including a lot of Three Stooges stuff. That's how I also saw Elf, and the X-Files was because of her. But the Three Stooges, I was so happy. I had the biggest smile when Columbia finally released these. Because they would always release episodes, and usually it'd be like the same type of episodes on DVDs. Like half of them would have episodes like Disorder in the Court. That'd be on almost every DVD they sent out. Maybe Men in Black. Not that Men in Black, different Men in Black. Maybe Ants in the Pantry. Maybe the one with Shemp where they're waiters. Like, they always had the same episodes on so many DVDs. And it's like, man, I wish they would just release them and put them in order, and thankfully they did. And my favorite Three Stooges are Moe, Larry, and Curly. Of course, Moe and Curly were brothers. The history was Moe, Larry, and Shemp, and then Shemp went off and he wanted to do his own thing. He was actually in a couple of those Abbott and Costello stuff. And from what I heard, Lou Costello was jealous of Shemp because Shemp would make people laugh on set, and Lou Costello didn't like that. At least from what I understood. But since he left, said, hey, let's get our younger brother Curly. And shaved his head, and history was made. Just, I love the Three Stooges, big fan. Volume 1 goes from 1934 to 1936. People don't ask, what are my favorites? It's hard to pick favorite ones. I think the one called Men in Black, that was actually nominated for like a short film Oscar, I believe. Men in Black. That's the one where they're doctors. Dr. Fine, Dr. Howard, Dr. Howard, Dr. Fine, Dr. Howard. I'd have to watch these again, fresh in my head, to do it justice. Like, what are my favorite episodes? Because they made so many, and I mean that in a good way. But then you have from 1937 to 1939. 1940 to 1942. Actually, some of these do describe on the back what's on them. Here. Okay, maybe not. But this one, yeah, one of them is they did a spoof on Hitler, making fun of Hitler during that time period, called You Nazi Spy. 2 times where they made fun of it. Also, you have A Plumbing We Will Go, which has the thing where I think that's the one where the water keeps coming up, so Curly just puts a pipe on there and thinks it's okay. Then the water comes out of that. Then he puts another pipe and it keeps going. He makes him trapped in the bathtub. And then you have from 1943 to 1945. And then from 1946 to 1948, where we're getting to the last of Curly, because unfortunately what happened was he had a stroke during filming the short Halfwit's Holiday. And so they got Shemp to come in to work for Curly, and that's where you have the start of Shemp's episodes. Which is too bad about what happened. Then more was Shemp from 1949 to 1951. And 1952 to 1954. And let's see. Shot in the Frontier parodied the classic film High Noon. A 3D short called Spoops. Also part of my Backfire. 3D shorts back in the day. Of course, not in 3D on the set, but still pretty interesting. And just to show that. And then we get to the last of Shemp, because unfortunately he died of a sudden heart attack in 1955. And so they got this guy named Joel Besser, who many consider, including me, to be the worst stooge, because he didn't want to be hit, he didn't want to be hurt, he didn't really want pies in the face, he didn't really want to do anything, just, stop. He did. He sucked. With all due respect to Joe Besser, he sucked. I don't know why he even took the job. But, yeah, many people consider him the worst of the Stooges because of stuff like that. Mo originally wanted veteran Joe DeRita, which he would work with later, but Joe DeRita could not get out of his contract, so Mo went with Joel Besser, who was well known on the vaudeville and burlesque circuits. But yeah, you have a little bit with Shemp, and then the rest with Joel Besser. Sort of the final of the Columbia shorts. And then after that, they did get with Curly Joe DeRita to film movies, including The Three Stooges in Orbit, Three Stooges Go Around the World in a Daze, The Outlaws is Coming, Rocky and the Rockies, Three Stooges and Meet Hercules, Time Out for the Rhythm, and Have Rocky Will Travel. Now this actually, there's a couple of these. Rocky and the Rockies was a movie from 1945 which had Curly in it. They're not I don't think they're the stars, they're in for a little bit of it. Same with Time Out for Rhythm, which was 1941. A lot of these movies back in the day, they kind of followed a formula where it'd be a musical number, a lot of musical numbers, then a very fresh-faced guy and a fresh-faced girl with a love story. And then you have some comedy guys and doing bit parts, bit things in the supporting role. And that's what the Three Stooges were in these two movies, Mulder and Curly. And then the other four is Curly Joe DeRita. The Outlaws is Coming is pretty much during the Wild West, and all these guys like Wyatt Earp and Billy the Kid and go after them. Go Around the World in the Days is a takeoff Around the World in 80 Days. They meet Hercules, that's pretty self-explanatory. That's what the disc looks like. And where is the other thing? There's another. One sec. This I picked up just because it looked cool. I like the presentation of it. The Three Stooges Collector's Edition. Just thought that was a cool cover. It's like cardboard, like hard cardboard. This is very, very cheap too. And it has little stuff like some stuff they were on. For example, the fourth one is some of the episodes of a cartoon they voiced, which is Mo, Larry, and Curly Joe Dorita. About 13 of the cartoons on disc 4. Some of the commercials they actually did do some commercials. And then some bit stuff that either Shemp or other people were in that had nothing to do with the Three Stooges, or a family album. Certain things that they either made cameos in, or they had made an appearance in, or Shemp made an appearance in, or sort of extra material that I haven't seen too many times before. Again, the only way I would do a review of this justice is when it's fresh in my head, because last time I saw this is when I bought it, which was quite a few years ago. And then getting to this stuff you guys know about, because I've already showed it before. Godzilla, we started out with Gojira. And I like a lot of the Godzilla films. Gojira, Godzilla vs. Monster Zero, Terror of Mechagodzilla. This is the Gojira by itself. I like the Japanese version of the original film. And it's just showing that, yes, I'm a fan of Godzilla in different incarnations. This, of course, you guys already know about. I reviewed the original King Kong from 1933, which I saw quite a few times when I was a kid. Still enjoy to this day. Son of Kong I watched recently. Didn't mind it. It was okay. The original Mighty Joe Young, which I really enjoyed. It was a nice surprise and pleasure. A lot of these Lane 618 sent me, but I had a pleasure with older films like Rear Window. Definitely one of my favorite Hitchcock films. Rope, which I thought was okay. I liked. And I reviewed these. These reviews are on the channel. As well as other ones like Saboteur and The Birds, which I would say this and Rear Window are my two favorite Hitchcock movies. Psycho I don't mind as much as I used to back in the day, but I prefer The Birds and Rear Window. Again, I'm not going to go too in-depth because I have a review of The Birds and Rear Window and Rope on my channel for those interested. The Lon Chaney original Phantom of the Opera, which is has the 1920 restored version and the 1925 original feature version. You see that Lon Chaney was definitely a performer that put some heart into his work, especially the memorable look of the Phantom. And yeah, silent films have that unique atmosphere to them, just like this one, Metropolis. I do want to pick up was it Giorgio Moroder? There's another version of this where someone changed the music to it, and I would actually like to give that a look to compare it. But I enjoy Metropolis. Really cool look and designs for a film from the 1920s. A lot of imagination. Definitely gives a unique feel to it. I can see why so many people were influenced by Metropolis. Again, for a film made back in 1927? Somewhere around there. Pretty impressive. And this is a 2-disc set, which has a 50-minute documentary on the making and restoration of the film, which is pretty interesting because there's, I believe, some footage missing, and they like found it in this place called Museo del Sena, Buenos Aires. Like, so in Buenos Aires, like, this missing footage was recovered and discovered in order to bring you more of a complete version of Metropolis. That's why it's called the Complete Metropolis, which I thought was very interesting. Very interesting. So, definitely an interesting film. These are films I've reviewed on my channel. This was a gift from my good friend Michael Keane. The Universal Classic Monster Movies. Again, I did review these. It's on the channel. There's Dracula, which I enjoy, with Bela Lugosi. I like Bela Lugosi. There's Frankenstein, which I also really enjoy. There's The Mummy, which wasn't my cup of tea. The Invisible Man, which was the first time I had seen it when I saw this set. Pleasantly surprised, really enjoyed it. The Bride of Frankenstein, which I like. It's okay. The Wolfman, which I love the look of the Wolfman, and Lon Chaney Jr. did a great job. The film itself, eh. The Phantom of the Opera, this version I don't really care for at all. It's my least favorite in the set with Claude Rains. And then Creature from the Wild Lagoon. It's a pretty decent flick. It was okay. I had some issues with it, but I love the look of the creature. Definitely my favorites of this would be Frankenstein, The Invisible Man, and Dracula, but very cool set. Again, I reviewed all these for those who want to know more of my thoughts on them. They're on my channel. Then we have stuff like this. Beats from 20,000 Fathoms I need to see again, but I do really enjoy them. Definitely one of my favorite films of the 50s. I'm trying to remember what exact year was it. 1954, give or take. Yeah, really enjoyed it. I don't know, there's some elements that remind me of something like Aliens or something. I can't put my finger on it. Let me put this way. I can see if I heard that a lot of films later on took influence from this, I would believe it. I just really enjoyed a lot of the touches it had, and I thought the effects for a 50s film were fun to watch, and it moved at a good pace. It wasn't boring at all. Really enjoyed them. One day I want to review that movie, but again, definitely one of my favorites of the 50s. And then I'll show a couple more since we're getting 30-minute mark. Comedy-wise, I show a lot of other stuff, but The Odd Couple, great comedy. Jack Lemmon, Walter Matthau, greatly missed. They worked so well together, had a wonderful chemistry with each other. I remember for a joke in this, for a film that's rated G, I remember it caught me off guard. It took me 5 minutes to realize that F-U meant Felix Unger. That's not exactly how he worded it, but check the movie out for those who want to know the exact way. Just again, very funny, very entertaining film. And I know a lot of people don't like the sequel, but I do enjoy the sequel. I like these two together. Thought they worked very well together. Great chemistry. Sadly missed, but this is a great comedy. I like both those movies. The Thing from Another World. I actually saw this before John Carpenter's The Thing. I saw this one when I was a kid and really enjoyed it. I love the location out in the Arctic. Had some nice atmosphere. The score worked for the film like a glove. The Howard Hawks production, and it was directed by Christian Nyby. But the producer Howard Hawks, you can tell he had a big influence. The Terrors really spit that dialogue out very fast, and it really made the, well, it says here, a snappy ensemble. Exactly, it was a snappy pace. Had some good suspense, especially a great shock steer moment when they open the door without any preamble, and the monster's right there and tries to hit someone. And again, because it wasn't a musical scene that built up, hey, there's a steer coming, it's just normal, and oh shit, there it is. Definitely a lot different than the original story, Who Goes There? But this was still a very fun monster movie from the 50s. Again, 1951. I would say this is another one of my favorite films from the 50s. Really enjoyed it. Granted, I put John Carpenter's The Thing above it. I mean, that's one of my favorite films of all time. But this is still a damn good movie. One day, I don't know if it'll be soon or if I'll wait till my birthday month in May. I'm going to do a John Carpenter marathon, and in the midst of that, I'm going to review some extra stuff, including when I reviewed The Thing, I'll review this first. So I'll review that. And Westerns over there, which actually I'll show it since it's right over here. I do enjoy some of the Eastwood Westerns from back in the day. One's actually in the other room, I forgot the date, called High Plains Drifter. Someone actually sent me the Blu-ray of that long ago. That's a really cool Western. I really enjoy that. And then a guy named Sawney Bean, and I will review these soon, because I've been wanting to watch these again. I saw them and, whoa, wow. A Fistful of Dollars. When I saw they sent these, I'm like, man, I need to watch these again. For a few dollars more, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I'm actually one of those guys that likes the first two more than the third one. I know most people say The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is their favorite. I like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but the first two I like a bit more. In fact, I think the second one might be my favorite, but I want to wait on that when I watch these again. But yeah, three damn good movies from back in the day in the 60s. I would say these are some of my favorite movies of the 60s. And speaking of Westerns, this has a movie called Boot Hill with Terence Hill, but I'm mainly talking about They Call Me Trinity and Trinity Is Still My Name. And of the two, I definitely say They Call Me Trinity is my favorite. Terence Hill and Bud Spencer, Italian guys who made their own spaghetti western, but they fused it with comedy and slapstick. Very funny. And then, of course, when they came to the U.S., they were dubbed. And they became so popular that there was tons of Terence Hill and Bud Spencer movies. And sadly, this is just a cheap DVD with 3 movies on one disc. From what I could see, there's not a good version to get They Call Me Trinity. At least I couldn't find it. Granted, I don't know who would release it, but it'd be nice to see a re-release of these. Maybe even on Blu-ray or something. But at least the first one. Or, preferably, the first two and stuff. There's a couple other Bud Spencer, Terence Hill films I like, but They Call Me Trinity is definitely my favorite. Very entertaining film. If those who saw Django Unchained with Quentin Tarantino, at the end of the film, when the credits start, you have that song, do 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 do. Do 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 do. Oh, he's the best. That's from They Call Me Trinity. That's where Tarantino got it from. So hey, Tarantino, if you got some clout, get these films released on Blu-ray or something, man. But yeah. Again, just wanted to show. It's already 30-some minutes long. That's why I didn't go too in-depth in these. But yeah. Granted, the 80s and 90s and quite a bit of the 70s, like Kolchak the Night Stalker and Dirty Harry movies, Assault Precinct 13, Jaws, Alien, many films of the 70s I love. Rituals with Hal Holbrook, many more. Duel with Steven Spielberg, as well as Jaws. I love the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but there is quite a bit of stuff back in the day I enjoy as well. And that's the thing, never discount a movie because it's too old. Because you may be losing a gem. And granted, I know there are certain movies that even I say, yeah, it's just not my cup of tea. And sometimes you are right. But even if it sounds remotely interesting, I would say at least give it a chance for a watch. Because there is some good older stuff before the 70s. And again, just want to do something a little bit different. Thanks for watching. Take care. And we will see you later.